Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Crown and today we are going to have some more stories that I hope that you will enjoy. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now, without further ado, let's go! First story. The Screaming Banshee. This happened just yesterday. I'm currently working from home due to COVID-19 and being on a national lockdown. However, I had an appointment to attend, so I booked a half-day holiday. My shift was over and I changed out of my PJs. Working from home and no need to get properly dressed. I then dressed smart but casual. Black denim chunky cream knitted jumper. I'm in the UK, so it's cold. And a black jacket. Looking smart, I dragged a brush through my hair and slapped on a bit of eye makeup, looking half decent, and made my way out. Following my appointment and this day being a Friday, my weekend started early. In a good mood, I decided to get my shopping out of the way. This way, I do not have to venture out over the weekend. Since lockdown, I have been doing the bulk of shopping online and only needed a few things. Fresh fruit and vegetables, maybe some chicken, and I fancied making fajitas for supper. So sporting a mask and soaked in hand sanitizer, I'm ready to brave the shops. On my route to the bus stop home is a large-ish supermarket. I decided it was great to get everything I needed. So not needing much, I opted for a pull-along basket and started my way around the store. I'm familiar with the place, so I'm able to navigate my way to quickly get in and out. However, I cannot resist bargains, and I notice they are having sales on homewares, cushions, bedding, and so on. So I headed in to take a peek. So I'm on my knees rummaging in the bedding and finding close to the bottom a duvet set in colors that fit nicely with my bedroom. This thing is a bargain, 75% off the original price. In my basket it goes. Realizing I made a bit of a mess, I started to tidy it up and put the things back that had been displaced during my rummage. And that's when it happened.
"Excuse me,"
someone said while poking me in the back.
"where are the cushions?"
I looked up to see a woman in her 20s pushing a push chair. Stroller for the guys across the pond. And another child, about 3 or 4, holding the push chair. I said, "Huh?"
"Cushions, cushions,"
she blurted. So I pointed to the back wall about 5 feet away and said, "at the far end." She never said thanks, but maneuvered the push chair in that direction, stopping to reach into my basket, taking out the duvet set, looking it over, and throwing it back into the basket. And I stood there with a what the heck face, confused and shocked at so many personal infractions. This woman firstly not observing the social distance rules, plus having no manners and downright rude. I hadn't at this point made the connection that she had mistaken me for the store staff. Anyway, I'm almost done. I just need shampoo, so I'm heading that way, as it's at the other end of the store, but the store is not that big. I reach the toiletries aisle to see the rude woman stomping her feet, flailing her arms, and shouting obscenities in front of her children. And she was doing all of that at a young teenager. She's demanding 3 more of the cushions she's holding, telling her to go fetch them right now. The teenager is visibly shaken, trying to tell this vile woman that she does not work there. At this point, the vile woman sees me. She starts clicking her fingers and gesturing that I go to her. My brain has now worked out what is going on. I walk towards her, all the while she's ranting about cushions. It was hard to make out, as by now the children with her are screaming in distress. As soon as I'm close enough, I just raised my hand for her to stop, instructed her to observe social distance from the teenager who is now shaking with tears rolling down her face. I then tell the screeching vile banshee to shut up while clicking my fingers at her. I look her dead in the eye and slowly, in a very firm voice, say, "She doesn't work here. I do not work here." Staff and manager have now arrived and The vile banshee immediately starts screaming her version of events, while myself and a distraught teenager are ushered towards another member of the staff, who gestures to us to go to the front of the store to the customer service area, where there is seating. I explain what happened with me, while the teenager, still shaken, explain what happened with her. Around 30 minutes later, I see the screeching banshee being escorted out of the store by the police. The manager comes to us and apologizes for the experience. He instructs the staff to ring up our purchases without charge, and then gives the teenager and myself a £100 store card for the inconvenience. Apparently, the rude screaming banshee was banned from the store. Just so you know, the staff wore a blue uniform and blue tabards. Absolutely nothing like what I nor the teenager were wearing. Next story. A Karen rear-ends me and ends up getting arrested. This happened to me when I was 18. I had just bought my first car about a week earlier and was driving over to my then-girlfriend's house. As I was driving along the road in front of a row of terraced houses, a door opened and a kid darted out of the door. Not knowing if they were planning on stopping or not, I slammed my brakes, stopping dead. The kid had turned and carried on along the pavement, so apparently wasn't heading into the road. Anyway, in my sudden stopping, I really did not care what was behind and got rear-ended. Nothing too serious, both cars drivable, just bent bumpers. The woman in the car behind was in her late 30s, came and steamed out of the car screaming that I could have killed her and her kid. She was alone in the car, so no idea where the kid came from. Being 18 and having only had my car a week, I just went right to the formalities of exchanging information. She wouldn't even entertain that idea and kept shouting about how I better pay her for the damage and emotional distress, otherwise she will call her husband, who will come and screw me up. I then pointed out that we need to exchange information, and threatening me will just mean I ring the police. Mentioning the police really set her off into a tantrum about my attempted murder of her and her kid. Again, no kid there. I missed most of it because I was on the phone talking to the dispatcher. As soon as the police turned up, it instantly switched from ranting to raving to running to the officers in floods of tears about this 18-year-old guy bullying a poor mother after causing her to crash. The officer spoke to us both, ran our details. Wouldn't you believe it? Her car had no MOT. Mandatory self-test here in the UK. That set her off screaming at the officers about them being wrong and needing to speak to the sergeant. I completed my mandatory breathalyzer and showed a whole 0.00. And the officer took down my details. Karen, however, was busy screaming at the officers that their machine was wrong and how dare they accuse her of drink driving. She got arrested for failing to provide a sample, and in the process of the arrest, got a resisting arrest tacked on. Once they got her in the van and arranged a tow for her car since she wouldn't be moving it, the officer came back and gave me all her details and said they would put mine against the log so her insurance company could find it out, but she couldn't. Her insurance paid out for all my damage, plus some medical because I was sore a few days later. I was called to be a witness in court. She got a 1-year driving ban and £500 fine for the failure to provide a sample and resisting arrest. So in summary, rather than provide me with her name, address, and insurance carrier, she instead got arrested, banned from driving, a fine, and had to provide me with her name, address, and insurance carrier. Next story. Let an ex-elected official call the cops on himself. So several years ago, I worked as an unarmed guard for a security company that was contracted to watch over a new construction site for a large wind farm. This area was hilly rural terrain with lots of wind, perfect for this kind of project, or so I was told by the many contractors on the project. It was also popular with hunters, both local and not. The possibility of bullet holes in equipment being the primary concern, followed by a long-distance spy theft. The property had an old dirt road running through it that have been previously open to anyone wanting to use it. This part becomes more important later. I have been working on this site since they broke ground on construction and never had any issues until a roll of copper wire was stolen. Our company had assumed that anyone trying to do anything on the site would use the heavily improved road through the site. They were proven wrong when that spool went out a back road. The only other access road that made up behind the property was nearly impassable for anything but four-wheel drive trucks, so it had been considered unimportant beforehand. Needless to say, we moved to 2 guards minimum overnight, one at the main entrance and one patrolling the site. The other change was that the company who owned the project decided to require every person entering the site to have a badge identifying them. Due to the popularity with hunters, it created some issues due to this road now being the smoothest and quickest way to the backside of the property. The hunters would come and go, but the people who owned cabins behind the property were more regularly seen throughout the year. It was one of these owners that became the biggest problem. He was proud to flaunt the office he had previously held and adamant that he had an easement to drive through the property to get to his. It may be different in other areas, but here an easement, ability to drive through someone else's property, is given if there is no alternative route available. With there being a road that led out to the public roads from the back of the property we were guarding, this was not the case here. The company we were contracted with was actually pretty reasonable with allowing access, no money involved, and just some personal information and identification. For this particular individual, that was good enough. He made a routine of speeding past the guards and refusing to stop. So a gate was installed and kept shut short of the construction crews starting and ending shifts. One of the other guards let us know that he was trying to get a ticket or get arrested so he could take the owner to court. My luck would have it that he chose one of my shifts to try to run the gate. This shift being a midday on a Sunday with a crew having come in for overtime to fix something in one of the nacelles. The large box behind the blades had been flagged during testing and couldn't wait for repair. Honestly, not too sure what was going on with that end. With all of that in mind, this gentleman drives up and starts yelling about accessing his property. We have his pictures, so I already knew who he was. I pretended not to hear him clearly, giving him enough time to start using the gate in front of him. This is not a fancy electric gate. It's a steel cattle gate that you have to walk open and closed. As I started shutting the gate, he starts driving forward, so I stop and stand in front of his truck and let the gate swing back open. He tells me to move out of his way, to which I respond that I know he won't risk him running me over because he knows he would lose what he's trying to gain: free and unrestricted access through the property to him. Seeing that I have the advantage, he decides to try a different approach. He made a comment along the lines of just blocking the road until I let him through or call the cops. I bluffed a little in telling him about the crew working on site and said I wouldn't do anything about it, but since they were on overtime on a weekend, I wouldn't stop them from doing whatever they needed to do to be able to go home, which led to him pushing to get the police involved. Now is where we start to get into the MC. I was given explicit instructions not to call the police on him, because all that was wanted was for him to come back during the week to get a bath, which I told him repeatedly to no avail. He decided to keep pushing the police getting cold, which I kind of started to find funny the more he talked about it. He went from simply saying I should call them to more in-depth pushing. He asked if we had a phone in the guard check, which we didn't. He asked if I had a cell phone, which I lied and said I didn't, which was more believable considering they hadn't gotten very popular yet. He then said he did, but didn't want to call 911 since it wasn't an emergency, and asked if we had a phone book. Still not sure why we had one, but it was there. He even tried to get me to call the sheriff on him off of his own phone, which I again refused. Not ready to give up, he took it upon himself to call the sheriff's department on himself. Satisfied that the police were on their way, he moved his vehicle aside and allowed me to shut the gate. It was about 30 minutes before the first deputy arrived, since it was a weekend in a remote part of the county they served. Being the security guard, they approached me first. I told him what had happened and that neither my company nor the property owner had an issue with him or what he was doing, as he was outside the gate and not blocking anything. The officer shook his head about this guy, calling them in himself, and walked over to talk to the ex-elected official. It's about this time that the crew that was working came down, asked what was going on, and had a quick laugh before heading back home or wherever they were staying. In all, about 5 officers responded to this call, and each one gets a laugh about getting a call like this one. It must have been a slow day for them to have so many show up for this joke call and then take another half hour to 45 minutes deciding how to handle it. In the end, they gave him his ticket for falsely reporting a crime or something along those lines. To which I hear him yelling out of his window as he drives off that he got his day in court. The officers, who had yet to start leaving, laughed and said yeah, he will get his day in court, but it's not going to be the one he thinks he's getting. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.